Being born is an experience of our first altered state. We come from a briny sea of warmth and perfect suspension. And then suddenly there are lights, sounds, and breath. Our first breath is like a hit off the pipe of life. And you know what they say, the first one is free. And then after that, you want another and another and another. So life is the original altered state. I mean, if you really let it sink in, life is such a surreal thing. I mean, even if you put aside the fact that Donald Trump is leading in the GOP polls, life is amazing. Here we are in these bodies on this planet, conscious together. Wow. But we never let ourselves take that in. We never let ourselves feel that awesomeness. Instead, we fling it outside of ourselves, and then we go chasing after it, chasing after another reality, a feeling of numinosity, our true nature. Having been born in the 1960s, the search for this other reality was in the air, figuratively. The American youth of America had given up on the American dream of the 1950s. And this search for the other was in the air, literally, in my life. My dad smoked weed. In fact, I remember being 4 years old and sitting on the kitchen counter and helping my dad make spice cake. There was Kelly's spice cake, and then there was Daddy's spice cake. Daddy's had extra spice. Even Dad was in search of that other reality. And in 1969, he caught a glimpse of it. In 1969, my dad dropped acid for the first time, and the second time, and probably the 23rd time. And he caught a glimpse. He caught a glimpse of his true nature, and he saw that it did not consist of him wearing sharkskin suits and thin ties and a clean-shaven face. And he quickly became a counterculture god to college kids all across America. But as we know, and as I said, the buzz is never free. I remember one afternoon my mother coming into my room and saying, Kelly, Daddy's taken something, and well, I need you to help me. He doesn't feel very good. We found my dad standing there holding a picture of his old straight self. The glass was shattered, his hand was bleeding. Daddy, are you okay? And he took the picture and he smashed it against the wall and he collapsed into a heap of tears and rage. And my mom quickly jumped on him. It's okay, George. George, you're gonna be fine. And then I quickly jumped on him. It's okay, Daddy. Daddy, you're gonna be okay. I swear you're gonna be fine. We sat on him for 45 minutes as he raged and cried and eventually fell asleep. He'd gotten a hold of some bad acid. Being a counterculture god isn't as easy as it looks. Fame. Fame, that other altered state, that one that America seems to be very addicted to these days. And I get it, I understand. I mean, I remember being 9 years old and being backstage with my dad at Carnegie Hall in 1972. We were all hunkered down in the basement in the dressing room, and Dad was pacing like he always did, and Mom was in the corner having an intense conversation with her new best friend, and I was in the other corner eating Cheetos and reading Archie comics when we got the knock. 2 minutes, George. The promoter escorted us up through the bowels of the building, and as we came up from the basement, I began to hear the stomping and the chant, George, George, George. There were over 1,000 people saying my dad's name over and over again. And when he hit the stage, there was such a roar that every hair on my body stood straight up. I was surrounded by electricity, and there was this aching joy in my chest. I felt so alive. And even though I knew it didn't have anything to do with me, I still felt connected to it all. It was very intoxicating. And I knew that all I needed to do was to stay right next to my daddy, and this buzz would always be free. Ah, the buzz of the ego, the buzz of feeling special and unique. When I was 13 years old, I enrolled at Westlake School for Girls, an elite college prep school nestled in the bosom of the hills of Bel Air, filled with young ladies obsessed with their Louis Vuitton purses. I was miserable. I was not a happy camper. Oh, and speaking of camping, my second year there, my parents made me go on a class trip to Yosemite Valley, so, you know, Kelly, you could discover something about yourself. Ugh, whatever. My first day there, I met our camp guide. He was a guy named Felix who had these craves, like a crazy-eyed hippie, and he wore a beret like Che Guevara, and he kept talking about eating bugs for survival, and I was absolutely positive he was going to make this group of privileged daughters of Hollywood do just that, because in doing so would be some sort of victory for the proletariat. What I wanted to do is go up to him and say, hi, yeah, well, obviously I'm not with these girls. You see, my dad is George Carlin, and I helped him through a really bad acid trip once. I'm special. Yeah, thankfully I didn't say that. The next day I found myself up near Vernal Falls hiking with an overly cheerful guide named Peggy, who just wanted to teach me Indian songs. Wichita, himuai, awanichi, no huai. My last night in Yosemite, I decided to teach my girlfriends the song. Wichita, himuai, awanichi, no why. Wichita, himuai, awanichi, no why. I don't know if it was the fresh air or the magnificent display of nature or the fact that we'd been away from our neurotic West LA lifestyle for 5 days, but all the girls began to sing with me. Awanichi, no why. And soon I was one with the stars and the trees and the moon rising over El Capitan, and I was bigger than my thoughts and greater than my body. Oh my God, everything is perfectly placed. There's a place for everything. And if there's a place for everything, maybe there's a place for me. I'd had the glimpse of oneness. And so when I got home, I did what any good red-blooded American teenage girl would do: drugs. I started smoking weed, experimenting with Quaaludes, doing a little cocaine. In the 11th grade, one day, I decided to take magic mushrooms at school. Now, I wasn't totally a crazy girl. I didn't eat a whole gram or anything. I just had a few bites. I wanted to see what it would be like, and went to English class and sat there for 45 minutes and nothing was happening. So I thought, oh, okay, well they weren't good or something, or they're not gonna work. And I got up to go to the bathroom, and I'm walking down the hall and everything's fine. And when I go to sit in the stall, the walls begin to breathe. And I think, holy fuck, I am so screwed. Now, I can't ditch class. It's 11th grade, and my grades are really important, and I'm trying to get into a good college, and so I go back to class. And I go and I sit in the back of the corner, near the couch. I went to a very casual school at this point. It was called Crossroads. It was very Hollywood and very druggy and very hip. And we called all of our teachers by their first name, and my English teacher's name was Catherine. And so I was sitting there, and we were studying The Great Gatsby, and of course I hadn't read all the chapters, so I was a little nervous anyway. And so at one point she asked the whole class something like, "So in this first section here, what do you think the moon symbolizes?" And of course, we're all a bunch of bored teenagers, and of course, I'm a high teenager, and nobody's answering. We're just kind of all staring off into space. And then suddenly I look at Catherine's feet, and they begin sinking into the orange shag carpeting that is now like an ocean, and it's moving back and forth. And all I can think is, oh my God, the earth is liquid. Catherine's liquid. I'm liquid. F. Scott Fitzgerald is liquid. We're all liquid. And then suddenly I hear my name being spoken. Kelly, what do you think the moon symbolizes? And slowly my eyes move up Catherine's body, and I look at her blue reptilian face. And she's staring at me, and I say, his love for Daisy? And she looks at me, and I think, oh my God, she totally knows I'm like 3 feet to the left of my body right now. And she says, very good, and turns around and it's on the board. Fame, drugs, these are all things we use to pursue this experience of the other. But sometimes we need to get lost in order to really find this self. In 1997, my mother died, and I was a wreck. The day after she died, I was in my shower, my old shower in my old bedroom at my parents' house, and I was sobbing uncontrollably. When all of a sudden, a set of arms came around me, and my mother said to me, Kelly, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be fine. Now, I have to tell you, I don't know if it was my mother or my mind or what, but I felt her arms and heard her voice, and an incredible amount of strength entered my body in that moment. I jumped out of the shower and threw on my clothes and ran across the house to tell my dad what had just happened, and he said, fuck man, cool shit like that never happens to me. The day of the memorial, it was a beautiful day. There were hundreds in attendance. My dad spoke, and then I got up to speak. And I spoke about Mother's Day because, well, my mother died on Mother's Day. And I talked about how Mother's Day would never quite be the same for me anymore. And I spoke about love, and how love really is the only thing that survives death. And then, as I looked out at the space between all of us, the space that had been cracked open by death and that holds unflinching honesty and where nobody needs to hide, this incredible sense of joy filled me because I was so tired of hiding. And I didn't know how and when or where, but I knew I wanted the rest of my life to be about this very space. And I know it's strange to say, but that day was one of the most beautiful days of my life, and that it took my mother taking her last breath for me to find myself. Thank you.